Welcome, everybody. This is Michelle Poverman from Sage and Stone.
What's up, everybody? Ashley Hasiotis from Beta Healing, bringing you your Monday morning 411.
And we are talking today about friendship, and we're talking about some of the challenges and struggles that we're facing and some of the craziness that's happening in our world right now, right? So we want to start off by I want to bring up a topic, and I'm just going to bring up a couple topics, and then me and Ash are going to talk about it, and hopefully you guys will find some interesting heart-opening things, some things you hadn't thought about. But let's get started. I just wanted to talk a little bit about like the changes that are happening right now, right? So for me, one of the things I'm coming across a lot of, and I can talk about my own personal experience a little bit, but is like, I feel like we're moving so much from being like out there social, having cocktails, like having fun, seeing people. I mean, I would see friends at a bus stop every day. Like I'd feel connected, right? And so what I hear a lot from people in my practice as well as myself is it's really weird to be connecting with people when we're not having any of those social things going on. And I think it's causing a lot of us to reevaluate the friendships we do have and like, why do we have them? And are they actually the kind of friends we want to have? Because I think in these difficult times, like it's causing us to kind of reevaluate. And I think that because when I'm talking with lots of other women in particular, they're feeling a little bit like, I'm not really feeling heard and seen. I'm kind of feeling like, a lot of my friends are just so in their own world, and I don't even know, are they really ever there for me? Like, I don't know if they really ever were. And I don't know if it's just the times, if it's the fact that we were drinking a lot together, right?
Yeah.
If it's the fact that, without the structure in place, like, what is this relationship to me? And I hear a lot about that. So I just wanted to bring it up. What do you think?
I think that you're totally right. I hear that a lot too. And I think, we are, I think we should start with the fact that like we're all energy beings. So when there's a shift happening in the world, there's a shift happening within us. We are the world. So whatever's happening out there is really and truly happening within us. Some people know that. Some people are jive with that and get it, and other people don't, but it's still happening regardless. And so the pandemic, that's just one part of what's happening in the world, right? But let's just start there. So the pandemic, we can't physically see each other. And, for those of us who are still working, and this used to happen to me even before the pandemic, but for those of us who are still working, by the time 5, 6 o'clock or the weekend rolls around, nobody wants to Zoom anymore, right? They're just tired.
Yes.
They're like,
Totally. Like in the beginning, there was Zooming, right?
Totally.
Now it's kind of like,
no, we're not Zooming.
So exhausted, right?
I can't even see myself on screen anymore. I'm so annoyed by the whole thing. And so the pandemic is giving us like a lot of alone time and a lot of introspection time. And I think that that's what is helping them to ask those questions.
Yes.
Your clients are coming to you and they're like, WTF, like, this isn't what I thought this friendship was. And I want more from this friendship now. And so rather than fight it, right? Like, I don't want this friendship to change, or why am I not getting what I want to get, or whatever. Maybe it could be like just a refocus or a reframe. Like, let's just try to flow with this pandemic. And what is this providing for me as an opportunity to maybe see what I actually do want? Because we're all changing constantly. Remember that? My high school yearbook quote, people change and forget to tell each other. It's so true though, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's my first.
I like that. It's kind of like this, like, instead of being in resistance to it and being mad at each other for the shifting that's happening, to sort of just be with what is and embrace it. And instead of resisting it, sort of just be like, okay, so I am ready to let go of things that don't feed my soul anymore, right? Or people that once had a true place. Like, we can still hold, this is another thing, because there's a lot of friends for all of us. There's a lot of friends that like come in and out of our lives, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of friends that like we loved, and all of a sudden, you look back, you're like, wow, I haven't talked to that person in like 3 years, right?
Totally.
But like, there's a way to still love that person without being mad at them, right? Or angry at the change or resistant of the change. But at the same time, I have a question around that. So what then, therefore, when is it the right time to voice your needs and to kind of express that something bothers you, right? So like be in flow. Yes, like you see the changes happening.
Yeah.
But when do you make the decision to say, I really need to talk to her about this. This really bothers me.
Well,
Or
you know when you know. That's my take, right? You know when you know, because you just wake up one day and you're like, I want more. I can't do another day. I can't do another walk or another coffee or another whatever it is with this person because I don't even fucking want to go. And that's when you know, like,
are we swearing?
I'm sorry. Are we not swearing? I'm sorry. Um, sorry. So, that's my take is, when you know. And when it's just like, that's it. I can't do it anymore. When we're ambivalent about it, I think that means there just needs to be a little bit more time to cook, right? You need a little bit more time to cook on like which way to go, and like we talk about this all the time, but like our friendships are mirrors for like the work that we need to do. I mean, there have been so many times, Michelle, that I have sat across from you and been like, and you go, so do you think maybe that this is really about da 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 and not really about da da da? And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, obviously. but so that's the thing, right? So like, well, why do we feel like we can't speak up? Why have we not all along?
Right. Have we have a habit of creating relationships that we don't speak up in?
Or that we don't get what we want?
We don't get what we want. This kind of brings up another thing that I think is an important topic for a lot of us women. It's vulnerability, right? So like, what is it like there's so many of us. I myself, this is one of my things. So like I share that, like I have constructed a lot of friendships in my life growing up, like around being like, the one everybody goes to versus me being the person who I go to everybody, right? Like, so I create this dynamic where I always have people coming to me for things. And then I end up being like, well, like what the F, like no one's there for me, but I've created that. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think a lot of us do that. We have, we all have, especially those people that, I mean, I don't know, especially perfectionists, that kind of stuff. But, I just want to pull that out too, because I think vulnerability, and do you have safety of vulnerability in your relationships?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? So like, when do I make the decision to say, hey man, like that's my favorite line, like, hey man, can we talk? And again, when you know, but when you're unsure, that time is when I think is more introspection is needed. Do I have a pattern of having these relationships? Do I typically, this is what I used to do. I used to hold people out like that. Like, I'm good. Everything's great. I'm fine. Fuck everybody. I got it. You know what I mean? And that basically puts a wall up. So people don't think that you need to be taken care of. And that's why they go to you. And so that's a pattern I've been like deconstructing for a long time. But so this is the time when you're ambivalent, that ambivalence gives you the space to ask the questions. And I think even the most important question is, well, what do I want out of this relationship? Right? And then once you're clear on that, it's easy to ask for it.
So what you're suggesting is that we really want different things from different relationships.
100%.
Don't know what those things are.
Yes.
That maybe you get kind of lost in expecting things from the relationship that aren't going to come, or showing up in the relationship in a way that doesn't fit.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. 100%. And what I used to do for a long time, and maybe you'll resonate with this from like a spiritual perspective, I, for a long time, surrounded myself with like-minded people.
Yeah.
And that's good, but kind of boring too, right? Like, diversification in friendships is good. Not everybody needs to do the exact same things that you do. They don't need to eat the same way that you do, work out, have a marriage, kids, but it doesn't need to be that. But as long as you can find some value in the relationship, and you're getting and you're giving, and it's like this awesome give and take, then it's beautiful.
Mhm.
right? But they don't have to drink your Kool-Aid. And
Mm.
for a long time, if people didn't drink my Kool-Aid, I was like, I don't really have any use for them. But I was
I
missing
wonder
out.
why it is that we do that, right? Because I'm sure a lot of us can look around and be like, yeah, we choose people that we either admire,
Yep,
right? Or that we can see ourselves in, or that we can, I mean, obviously we want to relate to each other, but
right.
um, yeah, I wonder what the drive is in that.
For me in particular, I mean, haven't really studied that for myself yet, but I think for me, I needed like to be told that what I was thinking and doing was right,
Mhm,
because I was actually very unclear on that. I
mhm,
didn't really know at the beginning of my spiritual path, which was what, 15 years ago for us now. At the
mhm,
beginning of it, I was kind of like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was totally confused. And when you really start to crack that shell, there's a part of you, or at least for me, I was like, I don't even know if I like what I see in here.
mm,
Right? I was like, oh. And so I just needed to be around other people who were doing the work so that I could feel like whatever I was experiencing was normal.
mhm.
Right? But the problem with that for me is I never got a break from the work. And we do need breaks from the work. And so having that diversification in friends for me is like a breath of fresh air. It's like a, oh, cool. We get to talk about something different today. Like, awesome. We get to do like, I don't have to do all the talking, because I'm sure this is for you too. Like, people come to you, like, you're also the teacher all the time.
Mm, yeah.
And that gets, who wants to be the teacher all the time?
But that's why I think it's so important that you're looking at your relationships and seeing like what roles am I allowed to play in them? What space is there for me to take up and what space is there for me to not be the teacher or
Yes.
not be the person who's always has something wrong with them, right?
Yes.
Like and do who's creating that in the friendship, right? Like
Yeah,
I feel like that happens a lot. Like, oh, like I always feel like I'm always like there's something wrong and I have to just stop talking about all my shit all the time because I feel like I'm always talking about something being wrong
totally.
because that person's always being a teacher, you know?
Yeah, totally. It's funny. And specifically not talking about your stuff, like when I had Lyme disease, and I don't know if this happened for you. I got to a certain point where I just didn't believe I had Lyme disease anymore. I was
Mhm,
just done talking about it. I was
mhm,
done plugging into that. And but if you're around a lot of people and you've created patterns, we create patterns with our friends, right? So sometimes that's all that you have with that one friend
yes, yes,
is your sickness and your divorce or your troubled kid or whatever. And so it's important to be able to have that, but it's also important to be able to grow within the relationship.
yes.
And
Mhm,
I think, and so that way you can break free from the disease or whatever and still have the friendship,
right.
and that comes from that whole asking of like, what do I want out of this? And who am I? And what am I doing here? And blah, blah, blah.
So like this brings up an awesome topic because I do think this is happening a lot right now because a lot of people are under different levels of stress and things are different right now than they ever have been. And people are experiencing kind of a desperation or a loneliness or things they haven't before.
Yep.
But there, what kind of the thing you're talking about though is do we kind of have some friendships that get a little toxic,
Mhm.
right? Like, do we have friendships that like get kind of toxic and like how to set up the boundaries around that? Or when we have friends that just like we get off the phone with them, we're just like, God, I feel like shit after because every time I talk to them, it's like we're going down the road of all the complaints. Or, and if you're somebody, and this is another cool thing to talk about too, is like if you're somebody who is on sort of a spiritual path and you are trying to do the work of kind of raising your vibration and not kind of being in the gossip and being in the complaining and being in the low, low
Yep.
vibe stuff, like what do you do? Like, what do you do with those friends who, but you love them? Maybe you love them, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
you just love them and they're a part of your life for a long time. But,
Yes.
you know,
This is like a real thing happening in my life, literally at this very moment. So I have a friend who I literally love like they're my family. Okay. Like a lot of stuff has gone on between us, like really, really, really deep stuff. And there was, I realized as I have been, taking care of myself and asking the questions like, who am I? What do I want? All that stuff every day before my meditations. And I kept going, I kept going back to the well. I kept going back to the well with this girl and literally even asking for what I wanted. Like, hey man, been through this fucking big thing. Hey man, been through this really big thing and you didn't show up for me, and had this really big thing. You didn't show up for me again. And you know, how many times, I mean, literally crying, how many times am I going to go back to the well with this person? And it was just recently, like within the last probably 6 or 8 months, where I realized like this person just does not have the tools to take care of me. And it's not about me not being worthy. And it's not even about them fucking up. She literally just doesn't know how.
Right.
And right, literally. And
Right.
that comes from like, that's a whole nother video series, like why people are the way they are. But like, she loves me so much, but she just does not know how to show up for me. And so for me, I had to do like weeks of therapy, not maybe like a month and a half. So 4 weeks-ish, 5 weeks on creating boundaries.
Mm.
So like, what am I willing to do in this relationship? How far am I willing to go? It doesn't mean I had to cut the whole thing off. It just meant that I didn't have to do what I normally do. And what I normally do is I'm all in. Right. So like, but
Oh yeah.
that's not necessarily something that is what the other person wants, or B, what was good for me.
Right.
So I had to literally, and it was like, I cried like, oh my God, how do I leave this? How do I walk away? That's not a nice thing to do. That's not who I am. But defining who you are is by answering those questions. Like, what do I want?
I think you define part of who you are by defining your boundaries and standing in them. I use the word power because I think there's something about that. Like every time you would give up what it is that you really needed and wanted and still showed up and still called and still would be there for that person, you leaked, you know what I mean? Like you leaked like this power, you leaked through the boundaries, and you treated yourself poorly, right? Like every time you swallow it, like we do that.
Yeah.
And so here this person would take, and doesn't have the tools to return. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can all acknowledge a friend of ours in our life like that is just so hard. So the boundaries, like, I just want to point out too, something you said that was a little nugget, was like also being all in or all out, being like, or just even being like, I got to shut this off. Like, fuck that person.
Yep.
Getting real rigid isn't actually good boundaries.
No.
Like people think like, oh, I just tell everybody to F off and like, I've got really good boundaries. But that's actually not, that's actually the same. I call it unstable boundaries. So it's like unstable, right? Like a stable person can show up and say, I can't do this like this, but this is how I can. And this is all I'm going to do. And it's completely in alignment with who you are, what you want, because you figure that out in 5 weeks of therapy and meditation and all that. But some people think that if I tell everybody to F off, then I've got good boundaries because I've taken care of myself. But that's not actually good boundaries.
No, it's not. And it's black and white thinking. I call it black and white thinking. I have like 5 chapters in my book about black and white thinking. And for me, I'm trying to transition from my trauma survival brain to my thriving happy brain. And that's a process. And for me, you know this, right? We've been friends for almost 30 years. I was either in or out. I either liked you or I didn't. I was either on the diet or I was binging at McDonald's. Like, it's very, very black and white. And black and white thinking is not how the world works. We got like 50 shades of gray, no pun intended. And so that is but that was my first instinct, right? When I'm thinking about how to manage this friendship, I'm like, well, how do I just walk away?
Yeah.
Right. That was probably like week 4 in therapy. She was like, who says you have to walk away? You don't have to walk away. You just have to change how you show up in the relationship. And it's up to that person whether or not they're going to jive with that. But you need to do what's right for you. And when you're standing in your power and you're grounded in what you want, then whatever happens is supposed to happen for the relationship. And I was like, oh, okay.
Because what I hear in that is that you have let go of your need to control the outcome.
Yes.
Right? You have let go of like, I need to control her or get her to do what she's supposed to do. And I'll flip myself around in 7 different positions to try to get you to show up for me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Instead of being like, I'm okay. You're in charge of you. Here's the boundaries. I'm in charge of me. I'll give this much to this line. And if you don't show up, that's you. And I'm moving on. Like, it's okay. And I can still love you from afar and accept this is what our relationship is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be out of anger, right? It doesn't have to be out of resentment.
No.
That is what kills us, right? It's the poison that we swallow. So it's just being able to really just acknowledge, accept, see the person in their totality. Like, this is what they got. That doesn't fit for me. And I don't need to like perform to get this to work.
No, 2 things that just came up for me when you were saying that. The first thing was, so not forget about it, but in addition to what I need and what I want, the other reason why I was bending over backwards and literally doing gymnastics, which I never did and was a kid, so it's hilarious as an adult, was why was I so desperate for her to love me? Right? And like, there was a whole host of things like that. Again, it could be a whole nother video series, but it was, a lot of it came back to old mother wounds for me. And so my mother just cut me right off so many times.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh my God, the woman, poor thing. So, so whenever this friend would like not show up for me, it would be like I did something wrong, or something's wrong with me, or I'm not good enough. And so I would try extra hard to take care of her. And I wasn't doing any of this consciously, right? No. But I would try extra hard, take really, really good care of her, because if I took really, really good care of you, you're going to take really, really good care of me, right? And then it would never happen. So then when it didn't happen, it was like, I'm the bad one. I did something wrong. Something's wrong with me. And so I had to fix all of that. Then I actually had to mourn the relationship. I had to cry and say, like, I had to like journal it out, like, dear so-and-so, like, everything was great. It was you're so beautiful and so wonderful, but like, goodbye to our old friendship. And I'm going to love you and accept you for who you are in this very moment. But here's what I'm no longer going to do. And I burnt it and sent it up to the universe. And literally 2 days later, I get a kiss emoji from her, and I'm like, oh, of course, just freaking sent it up to the universe.
She just sent you a kiss. Yep. She's on board.
Yeah.
She's on board. Yeah. You kind of just said something that triggers something for me to talk about too, or just mention. It's not something everybody's going to resonate with because everybody does things differently, but you and I certainly, I'm realizing maybe even like where I got this from. I'm going to blame you. But so when I was in energy medicine school, they noticed something about me, and they're really good at calling out your shit in this school. Right. So like, you're not allowed to like fly under the radar at all. And I like to fly under the radar, if you know me. And I was in this horrible situation with this like person who was taking advantage of me, and it was awful. I mean, I didn't sleep at night. It was horrible. And even my husband too. It was like a landscaper situation, and they were horrible. They lied and manipulated left and right. Yep. But when they lied and manipulated to me, what I did in return was I would go out and buy them ice cream sandwiches. Yep. I would like, hey, do you guys want me to stop off at Dunkin' Donuts for you? I'm going to be passing by. And they would be the guy was a complete manipulative sociopath. And all I kept doing was trying to buy his love. I just kept trying to say, if I do this for you, you'll show up for me. You'll stop lying. You'll stop doing all this stuff. Instead of just being direct and being like, hey, dude, not okay. This bullshit's over, right? I kept giving ice cream. So then it was a joke throughout the rest of the freaking years that I was in this program. Like, Michelle, you're giving out ice cream. I'm like, like, damn it, because there is a way that, and it's a manipulation, right? It's like easier to manipulate through trying to get people to like you, right? Or love you, or give you what you want or what you need in a friendship or a relationship. Yeah. But it's not useful. It doesn't, it
doesn't get us what we want.
No, it doesn't. And yes.
And then we end up feeling wounded and lost and scared, and in the end going, well, what the fuck just happened? Right. So, I mean, I guess if anybody can learn anything from what we're talking about, it's if you can resonate with this at all, just take a breather and, ask yourself the questions like, what do I even want out of this relationship? And maybe even try, why do I show up like this? Do I have other relationships where I show up like that? And what am I willing to do to make a change?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And you and I mean, we've had what 30 years of a friendship, and we've gone up and down, and we've had months go by where we
Yeah.
can talk.
So let's talk about like, because I think a couple important things to talk about is communication and like, let's talk about what works with us, because that might be kind of cool to delve into, like, because we've been friends for 30 years and somehow managed to remain, like, every time I get on the phone with this woman, it is like, I mean, we could be peeing our pants laughing, or we are diving right in. There's not even a moment, there's no skip. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
it's either I'm crying myself to just, right, to like
Yeah.
get off the phone, or, we've got that,
Yeah.
So like, what is that? How did we get there,
I mean, I have I have a very small but very meaningful circle of friends. I
Mhm,
used to have a huge circle of friends.
mhm.
And for whatever reason, and again, another video, it's smaller now. Um, and so not all of them I feel like this with, but certainly with you, I feel like we've done this before together. We've been friends or family or something together before. And so I call those cosmic relationships. And so when we have cosmic relationships, it's very familiar. And so it's just,
Mm.
even like from the second we met, I felt very safe with you, and the beginning part of our relationship, when we were 14 years old.
Mm.
So, and I was not a very happy camper in high school and had some stuff going on. And you took very good care of me emotionally. I mean, at what a 14-year-old could do. And so, and then we went off to college. And I remember literally standing in your driveway, like, because you left first. You were like one of the first friends to leave for school, and I was still home. I packed your car up, and I literally stood in your driveway while you drove away. And your poor mother, I think she probably will remember this, she had to like hug me. I was like, like ugly crying.
Yeah.
And then we went away to school. And at almost every chance I could get, I drove to see you at school.
Mhm.
And then you moved to Colorado, and who knows what I was doing at that point, but we've always kind of weaved in and out,
Yes.
but with such ease.
Yes. I think personally, I just want to say this because I think it's an important little nugget here of our story, as I think that we forgive easy.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I
Yeah.
think I could say something to piss you off and you'd be like, interesting. And then we'd hear nothing about it and it's over. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that it was with ease because I think we forgive each other easily. I think that we give each other the benefit of the doubt a lot. Like, even if you said something that was like threw me or pissed me off in a way, I'd be like, the fuck, and I didn't always have a good, um, I wasn't always good. We were a good match when we were younger. You'd push me away and I'd be like, I'll just wait. Right? Like, is she coming to pick me up or not? No, she's letting me out. You know what I mean? So like we would have, but there was something that our issues matched, you know what I mean? Our life, our spiritual God, roles have matched, our journey has matched. But I think it has a lot to do with when you have that really good friend,
Yeah.
to forgive easily
Yeah.
and to recognize that they're going to stay and do the wrong thing and they're going to rub you the wrong way, or you're going to see their ugly sometimes, or you're going to see our stuff. And I don't know, I feel like one of the gems of our relationship is a couple things, that piece, but the other piece too is, for me, that you really know how to listen.
Mm.
As you're doing right now. So it's really important to me that if I'm going to have close friends, that they're like able to listen and be curious, right? A lot of us sometimes get into that ping pong match of like relating. So some people are like, your back hurts. Oh my God, my back hurts so bad. Let me tell you all about it.
Yeah.
Like going back and forth, but you're able to hold space. And I think that I hear a lot in my practice, people talking about their friendships that are coming up right now with COVID, is some of it is like, they're finding their friends aren't really there for them. And I think, even if that was happening for us, there would be a quick forgiveness.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I can't recall, I know we've had spats. I can't recall them because I don't think they were important enough to keep in the energy field, but I do resonate with that whole thing that you're saying about like the forgiveness part. And I think I use that "hey man" now because that came from us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, "Hey man, like you forgot to pick me up," or like, "Hey man."
Oh, man, like, are you gonna like show up to this?
Yeah, or like, "Hey man, what you just said was so rude." Right? Like, I remember being seen and being heard is a wound for both of us. We share that. But it played out in our lives at different times.
Yeah.
And so maybe that part of me could hear you when you would say it. And then when I would say it, you'd be like, "I can hear that,"
Yeah.
And so, I mean, again, I think cosmic relationship, but also think about the richness of our lives, of our separate lives. We've been on this health and wellness and spiritual journey separately and together for a very long time. So it's easier to have a relationship with people when they're doing their own work, because when you're doing your own work, it's a lot easier for you to own your shit.
Amen, sister.
It's easier for people that, like, you can tell by someone's look on their face, like when you said something that's fucked up, like their whole energy shit. Even if you don't even know anything about energy, you can
Say, oh, was I just a total asshole?
I literally
like, do that.
just did that this morning at acupuncture.
Yeah.
We were talking, he asked me if I was going to get the vaccine, and my response was blah, 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 blah. And I could tell my response jarred him. And I was like, "Ooh, yep." But he asked, so I was like, "Well, I don't need to apologize because he asked me. It's not like I gave him my, But when that would happen with us, we would do that. Like, "Oh, did that? Ooh, was that rude?" Super sorry about that. That's not how I meant to come out. Yes. But it's hard to do that. Back to your vulnerability. It's hard to do that when it's not safe to apologize.
Yes.
If I can't say to you like, "Ooh, I'm really sorry. Was that so rude?" If the other person doesn't say, "Yeah, but I totally get what you were saying." If the other person goes, "Yeah, and fuck you," and blah, 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 and then it brings up everything from the very first day you were friends, that's not a safe relationship. And so you have to have safety in vulnerability. And if you try it and you get the door slammed in your face, maybe you give it another chance, but like, that's not what a true friend is. It's not what a true friend does.
And I think you're nailing to like one of the things that is kind of an interesting thing to highlight is like, how do you know you can trust someone, right? I think you're nailing it by talking about, does that person make you feel safe?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that if you're doing the work and you're working on yourself and your bestie is not, or your good friend is not, it shows up.
Yeah.
And it kind of becomes like a less safe space if like I can't just own my own stuff and take responsibility for myself with ease, and you don't.
Right.
And if you don't, it then becomes two different languages.
Right.
And it's a different playing field, you do different lanes.
Yep. And I think that back to the original, kind of topic that we started, that this pandemic is giving us like new glasses. It's giving us the ability to see this happening in our lives, because we maybe were, like you said, maybe we were blinded by the fact that we're all out in a group and having cocktails, and you're in the middle of saying something to somebody that's like really meaningful to you, and you get cut off because somebody else says something, and then that person never follows up with you. You're like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe it's just because we were at a busy restaurant and you didn't think twice about it or whatever." But like, you really were in the middle of a moment and you needed to talk to somebody and you thought it was that person,
Mhm.
But there was never even a text the next day like, oh, by the way, we got cut off. How are things going with such and such, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think this pandemic is giving us the ability to see those things. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of changing the playing field.
Yeah.
And collectively, is my opinion, and not to get into politics, but collectively, the earth is healing.
Yes.
And so we're all healing together in our own way, on our own time, but it's all happening for all of us at
Mhm.
this time. So,
Yeah. There are just some of us that are highly aware of it.
yeah.
And then there are people, I kind of sometimes say, we used to joke about this too, there are different levels, right? And there's the surface,
Yeah.
right? You can live there. You
Yeah.
can live on the surface. You can have a lot of fun on the surface,
Yeah.
right? And then you start doing more work and you get deeper and deeper and deeper down. And sometimes people are like, is this even like fun doing the work? Like the work is hard. It's like, oh, I want to be on this spiritual quest. And you think it's so beautiful, but really when you get into it, you're like, you got to face a lot of your shadow, a lot of your tough, ugly stuff, right? And so it looks a lot shinier up there on the surface sometimes, you know what I mean? But to your point, just that during this time, I think those people that aren't living on that surface space, that are really diving into their own deepness and their own stuff, are really much more hyper aware of the global, the healing that's happening, that we're all healing. And so there's more language for it, and there's a different, it's not going to be easy to connect with people on a different level.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one of our next videos is going to be about like marriage and healing.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely need to talk about that, because I know it's not just friendships is happening too. It's
Yes.
marriages, because we're all home together
Yeah.
for the most part, right?
Well, one of our next thing, we have a couple things on being married, and one of the next ones coming up is about what to do when you grow and your partner doesn't.
Yes.
Piece, right?
Yep.
And yeah, so
Yeah.
I like what we're talking about.
I think we're getting ready to run out of time. Do you want to give us some therapist advice on how to handle this topic? Like 3 tips. What can people do aside from everything we've already said? But what would you tell, what do you tell your clients, when they're really struggling with this stuff?
You matter, you're enough, you're worthy, and you're lovable. If you don't resonate with those 4 things, if either one of those things gets compromised in a relationship, then it's not for you.
Aw, that
Mm-hmm.
makes me sad to hear you. Not sad, but it brings me tears. I
Yeah.
love that. I love it.
All right. So
Well,
good talking with you.
yeah, I hope that everybody loves it, and feel free to comment if you have anything that you'd like to say. If you need Michelle, she's Michelle at sageandstone.org or .com.
.org.
.org. So Michelle at Sage and Stone. I'm just Ashley at ashleyhasiotis.com or Ashley One Mission. I have a million addresses. So Ashley at Veda Healing, but definitely comment, and we'll happy to answer questions. And we're looking forward to our next video.
Bye.